What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rovardo, and today I'm going to be taking a look at 3 free agent offensive linemen that the New York Giants could potentially sign to reunite with brand new offensive line coach Carmen Bricillo. Now, of course, we know that the Giants went ahead and fired offensive line coach Bobby Johnson at the start of this offseason. Then Brian Daboll quickly got on the hunt for his next offensive line coach and identified Carmen Bricillo, the offensive line coach for the Las Vegas Raiders for the past 2 seasons, as the next guy for the job. So Bristol will be coming over here to New York to coach the Giants offensive line after 2 rather successful seasons with the Las Vegas Raiders. Of course, you guys know I'm a big fan of this hiring. I think Carmen Bricillo is the right guy for the job. You look at what he did with very limited talent over in Las Vegas. He got the most out of that talent, and he coached a pretty damn good unit 2 years in a row. The Raiders' offensive line ranked 10th in the NFL, according to Pro Football Focus this season. And Bristol found a way to get the most out of some of their players who, again, not the most talented players, not high draft picks, nothing like that. Some of them are career journeymen, and Carmen Bricillo found a way to turn them into pretty good players for the Raiders last season. So on top of that, a couple of those guys are going to be free agents this offseason. So the New York Giants could get a little creative here, get into free agency. They got their coach now. Now they got to add more talent to this offensive line. Maybe they could reunite a few of those Raiders players who are impending free agents with Carmen Bricillo. That's what I'm going to dive into in today's episode. 3 offensive linemen that the Giants could reunite with Carmen Bricillo. But before I dive into all that, make sure to leave a like if you do enjoy this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts on the topics down below in the comment section. If you listen on Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review and go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, let's dive into the first guy that I think the Giants might target in free agency to reunite with Carmen Bricillo, and that will be Greg Van Roten. He played with the Raiders this past season. He started 23 games for the New York Jets from 2020 to 2021. But let me tell you guys, before you get your hopes up, I'm going to say some good things about Greg Van Roten. That time with the Jets, it was a really poor outing for Greg Van Roten. Those 2 seasons were very bad. He ended up becoming a backup, a depth piece for the Buffalo Bills in 2022, only made 4 starts, appeared in 16 games, but made 4 starts. But he did have a career resurgence this past season under Carmen Bricillo. This was his first and only season under Carmen Bricillo. He had a career year with 17 starts. He started all 17 games for the Raiders at right guard, put in a 75.3 overall Pro Football Focus grade, which ranked 7th in the NFL among all guards. He only surrendered 5 sacks and 21 pressures this past season. So this guy, Greg Van Roten, 33 years old, has been with a bunch of teams, has never been able to find one place to call home, has never truly established himself as a reliable starting offensive guard, gets over here in Las Vegas, gets underneath Carmen Bricillo as his coach, and has easily the best season of his career and turns into a very capable starter, one of the best offensive guards in football in 2023. So Greg Van Roten, I think he, more so than the Giants are encouraged to sign him, he's really encouraged to go to the Giants and play under Carmen Bricillo again, because clearly something clicked under Bricillo. I mean, this guy, Greg Van Roten, was a career backup, a career nobody. Like, he wasn't able to establish himself as a starting 5 offensive lineman. He goes over to Las Vegas, takes a flyer there, 1-year deal, plays under Bricillo, and turns into one of the best offensive linemen in football, arguably. So, he's a 1-year wonder to this point, but it really could be the fact that Bricillo knew how to get the most out of Greg Van Roten. Greg Van Roten might recognize that and say, okay, you know what? To my agent, he'll say, to my agent, this offseason, I want to play under Carmen Bricillo. Call the New York Giants and get me over there. That's where I want to be. And so here's my take on Carmen Bricillo and whether or not the New York Giants should sign him. Yes, they should, but we shouldn't get our hopes up, Giants fans. Like, we've had moments like this in the past where the Giants go into free agency. It seems perfect. They sign the guy, and it doesn't pan out. Well, with Greg Van Roten, yeah, he was the 7th-ranked guard in football last season. That doesn't mean he's going to be the 7th-ranked guard in football this season, or the 10th-ranked, or the 20th-ranked. He could totally play a lot worse because he's coming over to the New York Giants, who historically, offensive linemen just can't succeed here for one reason or another. A lot of it has to do with who he's playing alongside. And maybe Greg Van Roten was a product of playing with some other pretty good players around him. The Raiders have a really good center who will also be a free agent. So I will touch on him later, even though we know our center position is locked up by JMS. But Greg Van Roten, my expectations for him, if the Giants were to sign him, I think that he would come in here, he would compete for the starting job. And at the very worst case scenario, you have a solid backup offensive guard with starting experience in Greg Van Roten. Best case, He goes into training camp and he wins the starting right guard job, and he is a top 10 guard in the NFL again, and he does start all 17 games for you. But he's 33. He's coming off of a 1-year deal where he played good football for the first time in his career. This guy's going to come in cheap. The Giants could probably sign Van Roten, 1-year deal, $1.5 million, $2 million. He's not going to get overpaid. There's not going to be some huge market out there for Greg Van Roten, a 33-year-old guard. So if the Giants want to reunite him with Carmen Bricillo, and he also sees the benefits to reunite him with Carmen Bricillo, the Giants should go out there and they should sign Greg Van Roten to that cheap deal. But again, we shouldn't expect him to be some high-quality starter for all 17 games because he only did that one season in his career. But we can expect him to at least be quality depth for the Giants offensive line. And we know this unit, I mean, it sustained a lot of injuries last season. And the reality is they could use some more depth, right? That does not hurt them to have more added depth on this offensive line. So Greg Van Roten, again, at the very least can be good depth for this team, and at the very best can be a really solid quality starter on the starting five at the right guard position. And we know right guard has been a problem for the New York Giants for years. I think that might be their biggest weakness on the offensive line going into the offseason outside of right tackle. Left guard, right tackle, take your pick. None of those positions are very safe for the New York Giants right now. But speaking of right tackle, let's talk about another Raiders offensive lineman who will be a free agent and could potentially compete for that starting right tackle job, because I know Evan Neal, former first-round pick, 7th overall pick, 2022, he's not panning out so far. It's been 2 rough seasons to start his career. His rookie season was very bad. His sophomore season, his second year in the NFL, it was also really bad, and then he got injured and missed half of it. So how much can you rely on Evan Neal going forward? First of all, you can't rely on him when he's on the field to be a great player. Second of all, can you really rely on him to be on the field? He missed half of this past season with an ankle injury. Season prior, he missed a good chunk of time with a knee injury, an MCL injury sustained against the Jacksonville Jaguars. So in totality, Evan Neal, through 2 seasons, has been a bad football player who can't stay healthy. Sometimes your best ability is availability. Evan Neal doesn't even have that going for him right now. So he's not playing good football and he's not staying healthy. He doesn't have much going for him. So in my opinion, the New York Giants do need to start considering their options at right tackle. Now, I'm not saying you cut Neal. I'm not saying you trade Neal. I'm not saying you give up on Neal. There was so much talent on Neal's tape at Alabama. The kid stepped into the NFL. He is still talented and he is still young. He still has time to turn it around and grow. I'm not saying that he just will never be a good football player. I think that he will be one day. I'm not sure if it happens with the New York Giants. I don't know if he becomes a good player, and I don't know if he becomes a good player at right tackle. Now, I've said it on the channel a few times. I think that Evan Neal needs to move over to left guard. If you move him over to left guard, he's playing alongside Andrew Thomas, and in the middle of Thomas and John Michael Schmitz. Andrew Thomas is one of the best left tackles in football, so having someone elite next to Evan Neal would help him, mask some of his flaws, push some of those pass rushing assignments over to Thomas if he needs to, or really just I think Thomas would help him stay on top of things and even motivate him to be better since they're working in close proximity together. I think that moving Evan Neal to left guard makes sense for that reason. Then also because in college, he started his career in freshman year as a left guard, a dominant one, a really good left guard. Then he played a little right tackle in his junior season or sophomore season, rather. And then his junior season, he played a left tackle. And that's when the Giants drafted him. He was playing left tackle when they drafted him. They converted him back over to right tackle. It hasn't worked. I think he's more comfortable on the left side of the offensive line. And again, playing with better talent around him should hopefully make him better. So I'm going to advocate all offseason long for the Giants to test Evan Neal out at left guard. I'm not giving up on him just yet. I think he needs to play guard first before we can give up on him. But again, it's been a rough 2 seasons for Evan Neal. No one can deny that. He wouldn't even deny that. He's said it before that he knows he needs to play better. So if he doesn't play better, though, the Giants need a backup plan. And that's where Jermaine Illuminor comes into play. This is the Raiders' right tackle last season. He started 14 games for them. He allowed only 6 sacks and 28 total pressures, turned in a 68.5 overall PFF grade, ranked 35 out of 84 offensive tackles in the NFL this past season. Now, 35 out of 84 isn't necessarily the best, but it's upper half, right? Because you're talking about 64 starting tackles in the NFL. You got left tackle to right tackle. You got 32 teams. Do the math. So 35 out of 64. He's right there in the middle of the pack. When was the last time that the New York Giants had 2 offensive tackles that were at least in the middle of the pack? We know that Andrew Thomas will be on the upper half of the pack, right? We know that he'll be one of the better tackles in the league. But the other position, the right tackle position, what happens there? We can't continue to send ranked 80 out of 84, 84 out of 84, the worst offensive tackles in the NFL who let up 10 to 12 sacks per season. You can't keep sending those guys out there as starters at the right tackle spot. The New York Giants need to bring in some sort of competition, in my opinion. So Jermaine Illuminor, I think, would make a great competition for Evan Neal, and also great depth behind Evan Neal because, again, Evan Neal has struggled to stay healthy. So Illuminor is one of those players that, in my opinion, could step in there if Evan Neal were to get injured, or if you get into training camp in preseason, maybe the beginning of the season, if you still have Evan Neal at right tackle and he's not playing well, maybe you pull the plug and you stick Jermaine Illuminor in there. Again, Jermaine Illuminor, his best seasons came under Carmen Bricillo. And in fact, he knows Carmen Bricillo real well. He was with the New England Patriots from 2019 to 2021. That's when Carmen Bricillo was there. Then he went over to Las Vegas and he continued to play under Carmen Bricillo with the Raiders. So clearly that connection runs deep. And I think that, like Greg Van Roten, Jermaine Illuminor would be motivated to move over to the New York Giants so that he can continue to work under Carmen Bricillo, develop those skills, and see if this offensive line coach can continue to get the best out of him. So I like Jermaine Illuminor. I think that he's the perfect signing. Again, this is a guy who's going to come in cheap. He's not going to be too expensive for you. The Giants could absolutely afford to sign him on a short-term, low-cost contract, not break the bank for him. And these are the signings that the Giants need. They need guys that they know can fit into their system. They know he can because he's played under Carmen Bricillo before. And they need guys who aren't going to break the bank, but can add something to this unit, can upgrade this unit in some way. Now, again, this isn't signing Jonah Williams. It's not signing Trent Williams. It's not signing one of the best tackles in the NFL or one of the best tackles on the market. This is signing a guy that's affordable and upgrades your unit significantly, because the Giants unit, it really is the worst. This offensive line was terrible last year. They need more talent. They need better coaching. They got some good coaching now with Carmen Bricillo, hopefully. You hope he pans out and he is the coach that we expect him to be. But now you need to add some extra talent there. And again, I think adding talent that Carmen Bricillo is familiar with makes a ton of sense. So Jermaine Illuminor as a potential right tackle or swing tackle. Think he can play on the left side as well. If not, he can be your jumbo tackle, line up alongside your offensive tackle in heavy run packages like we've seen Mark Lewinsky do this past season. So whatever the case might be, the Giants can definitely find a way to get Jermaine Illuminor involved in their pass protection and their run blocking up front. And again, I think that he's a good player and he's not an elite player. It's not like we're getting the best tackle in football, but he's a good player who will come cheap and will at least give something to this offensive line, insurance for Evan Neal, or maybe take the starting job at right tackle while Evan Neal moves to left guard. I think that would be an ideal situation. So Jermaine Illuminor is the other guy. I think that he's the strongest candidate for the Giants to sign. I would honestly say you could bet money that they're going to sign him. It just makes too much sense. Now, looking at the interior of the offensive line, once again, we talked about right guard, left guard, big problems for the Giants. Center isn't really a problem for them. They've got John Michael Schmitz. They just drafted him last year at center in the second round. That's going to be their center for the foreseeable future, hopefully. You hope he pans out. I believe that he will. But there is a center who worked under or played under Carmen Bricillo last season, Andre James. He's arguably one of the best centers in the NFL. He allowed just 4 sacks and 19 pressures in 2023. And he will be a free agent this offseason. Now, I don't think he's ever played guard before. I don't think John Michael Schmitz has ever played guard before. But if the Giants wanted to get creative and move either one of those two guys to guard, they could potentially try and reunite Andre James with Carmen Bricillo. Now, also, if Andre James isn't able to find a starting job out there for taking, then I think that he should come over here and he should play center for the New York Giants in a backup capacity. As maybe you play guard, maybe you play center wherever we need you. Just stay under the tutelage of Carmen Bricillo, who you know and who coaches you well. And again, John Michael Schmitz had some injuries last year as well, so maybe Andre James could step in if there were any more injuries to arise at the center position. But Andre James, the least likely of these three. That's why I don't want to spend too much time on him. Least likely to be signed just because we do have the center position locked down. But he is another notable free agent that will be on the market that's worked under Carmen Bricillo. So I would keep an eye on him as well. Would be a surprising signing, but still a possibility. But again, Greg Van Roten could be your right guard. Jermaine Illuminor could be your right tackle. Evan Neal in at left guard. John Michael Schmitz, your center. And, of course, Andrew Thomas at left tackle. That's a solid starting 5. Thomas, Neal, Schmitz, Van Roten, and Illuminor. It's a half Giants, half Las Vegas Raiders offensive line. But, I mean, that's kind of what you want, right? You know that these guys fit into the blocking scheme. The right guard, right tackle combo worked really well of Van Roten and Illuminor worked really well in Las Vegas this past season under Bricillo. Why can't it work just as well in New York under Bricillo? I think that it could, and I think that it should. So I would like to see the New York Giants target those two guys, Van Roten and Illuminor. Now, signing those guys would not prevent me from going into the 2024 NFL draft and taking a really solid offensive lineman if the board fell that way. Now, you guys know what I want in the first round, and it's not an offensive tackle, but let's say the Giants are sitting there in the third, fourth, fifth round, and a really solid prospect is falling down the board inexplicably. You could still take that player at right guard or right tackle, and you can develop him. But it's good to have some veterans in there that you know can start for you and give you at least average football the whole season if you need them to, while your younger players continue to develop. And that's what the Giants need to do. They got to bring in guys like a Van Roten, like an Illuminor, veteran players who've been in the NFL for a while, been with multiple teams, know how to find success. Those are the guys that the Giants need to sign. They don't have to break the bank to get these guys. So I'm all in on signing Van Roten and Illuminor. I think combined, the Giants are spending less than $5 million on their salary cap to get both of these players. If it's a little more, so be it. The Giants need to fix their offensive line, and they need to fix it immediately. So I'm all in on this. I think giving Carmen Bricillo some familiar faces to coach, some guys that he's coached before and coached successfully before, makes a ton of sense. And that's kind of my whole take on these three offensive linemen, but really these two offensive linemen that the New York Giants could target to reunite with Carmen Bricillo. But that pretty much wraps this one up. Make sure to like if you did enjoy this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts on the topics down below in the comment section. If you're listening to Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. But without further ado, I'll catch you all in the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.